Welcome back to the Deep Dive. If you're joining us, you know we like to take these vast libraries of source material, research, history, philosophy, and really distill them into something you can use right away. And today, our focus is on leadership. But we're taking a pretty uncommon approach. We're going to be diving deep into language itself.
That's right.
Because if leadership is, fundamentally about influence and guidance, then the vocabulary you use, or maybe more importantly, the moral vocabulary you live by, that's your ultimate operating system. Okay, let's unpack this.
Our mission is precisely that. We're exploring the language that didn't just, define a religion, but actively shaped a whole moral and ethical civilization.
Right.
We're executing a deep dive into the specific Qur'anic terms that define the Prophet Muhammad's leadership philosophy. And then we're asking, how do those ancient concepts apply directly to the challenges we face as leaders today, whether you're running a company or, a community?
I found the central thesis of our source material just fascinating. It elevates words from just like communication tools to being foundational building blocks.
Yes, they're architectural.
Exactly. It suggests that every successful organization, every civilization is really built on the definitions of the words it prioritizes. This isn't just some linguistic exercise, is it?
Not at all. It's about seeing how these spiritual concepts transform from abstract ideas in your head into rigorous operational principles that actually dictate behavior and policy.
So it's about action.
It's all about action, and that's critical. The revelation didn't just introduce new theological ideas. It introduced a robust, internally consistent moral vocabulary. Concepts like justice, patience, trust, excellence.
And we treat those as soft skills today.
We do. They're seen as soft virtues. But the sources show that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he transformed them into hardwired operational codes. He lived these terms.
Okay, so that transformation from concept to lived reality, that brings us to this powerful reflection point that I think defines our whole deep dive. Words truly create worlds.
Yeah, absolutely do.
Just think about it for a second. The definitions you hold right now for success, for truth, for power. If your definition of success is purely, say, short-term market cap,
right,
you will inevitably lead differently, maybe ruthlessly, than if your definition includes long-term ethical sustainability. These definitions literally determine our destiny.
And what's so fascinating here is that the vocabulary we're about to explore provides this unified, robust framework for what ethical leadership looks like. It's one that it sort of transcends the shifting sands of political trends or market swings.
An anchor.
These spiritual keywords provide an immovable anchor.
Exactly. So let's transition into the architecture of this system. The source material frames this around what it calls the operational philosophy, and we're diving into 4 central interconnected terms: Tawakkul, Sabr, ʿAdl, and Ihsān.
And we have to stress right away, these aren't separate, siloed virtues you can just pick and choose from.
No.
They function like 4 interdependent applications running at the same time on the core leadership OS.
That's a great way to put it, and that's the critical distinction, isn't it? These aren't just qualities you might mention in a mission statement. They're the foundational code of conduct.
Yes. The core insight we get from the seerah, the life history of the prophet, is that he didn't just teach these things in, abstract sermons.
Right, in theory.
He embodied them in real-time, high-stakes decisions. And by doing that, he turned moral guidance into demonstrable, repeatable behavior for everyone who followed him.
Which I think sets up the huge challenge for us today, doesn't it? I mean, in a world that so often rewards expediency, the shortcut, how can we move from simply knowing the definitions of these words, like on a flashcard, to actually living them? How do we make these vital concepts operational for ethical leadership, especially in these incredibly complex, fast-moving contexts we're in?
The complexity today is immense. I mean, just consider the development and deployment of emerging tech like artificial intelligence.
Oh, yeah.
Decisions being made right now about algorithmic fairness, data privacy, ethical boundaries, these have monumental global implications. And if our leaders lack an internally consistent ethical framework,
then the tech they release will be just as unanchored.
It will be equally unanchored. So we need to see how these terms can provide a stable ethical anchor when the technological landscape is just shifting under our feet constantly, demanding rapid response and high integrity.
Okay. So to understand the whole, we have to dissect the parts. Let's start with that internal pillar, the spiritual confidence you need to lead. Let's talk about tawakkul.
Right.
We'll start with tawakkul. Now, for many, this term is just translated as trust or reliance on God, and often, outside of its proper context, it gets simplified into this almost fatalistic resignation.
Like a passive waiting.
Exactly. A belief that you just wait for things to happen.
Right.
But the definition in the sources is far more rigorous. It really emphasizes the active role of the leader.
Absolutely. Tawakkul is defined very specifically as reliance on Allah after doing one's best. It's a spiritual confidence that complements, it doesn't replace, rigorous execution and strategic planning.
Okay, so it's not an either.
Not at all. Imagine a spectrum. On one side, you have passive fatalism, doing nothing and just waiting. On the other side, you have this arrogant self-reliance, believing only your effort matters.
Right, I'm in complete control.
Exactly. Tawakkul is in that sweet spot right in the middle. It demands maximum human endeavor first, followed by the surrender of the outcome.
That clarity changes everything. It just completely refutes any notion of being passive. It demands excellence in effort first, then strategy, then execution.
And only then.
Only then, when the leader has used every possible resource, does that concept of spiritual release apply. The Quran affirms this balance, specifically in the verse. And whoever relies upon Allah then, he is sufficient for him.
And that phrasing is key. Sufficiency comes after reliance, which necessarily follows your personal maximal effort.
So you have to do your part. You have to exhaust all available means.
And only when those means are exhausted or when the variables become impossible to control, which they always do in any high-stakes scenario, that's when tawakkul provides the psychological and spiritual resilience you need to keep functioning without, falling into despair.
The power of this is best seen when it's operationalized under extreme duress. And if we look at the seerah, the life of the prophet, the most vivid illustration of tawakkul in action has to be during the hijrah, the migration.
The migration from Makkah to Medina. And this wasn't just a trip, it was a full-blown escape from an assassination plot.
The stakes couldn't have been higher.
It was the single most existential crisis for that nascent community. And the prophet and his companion, Abu Bakr, they planned this journey with military precision. This part is so key.
They didn't just pray and walk out the door.
Not at all. They maximized their human effort. They chose an unconventional route. They hired a non-Muslim trusted guide to mislead their pursuers.
A specialist.
A specialist. And they strategically hid for 3 nights in the cave of Thar, just waiting for the search party to lose momentum.
So they executed their risk management strategy flawlessly.
Right?
But then the tension of the physical world comes to a head while they're hidden in that cave.
Yes. The search party, determined to find them, tracks them right to the mouth of the cave. The sources describe how they could hear their voices, their footsteps, just outside.
Literally moments from discovery.
They were physically separated from certain death by, a few feet of rock, and according to the tradition, a spider web.
And this is the pivot point. This is where it all changes. They had done their best. Every strategic precaution was taken, and now human effort had reached its absolute limit. External reality was about to overwhelm their plan.
And Abu Bakr, who was an immensely courageous man, he naturally feared discovery. I mean, you can imagine the tension, the silence, the sound of those voices. He whispers his concern. He says something like, if they just look down, they'll see us. We are only 2.
Which is a completely understandable human moment of vulnerability.
Yeah.
Of fear.
Of course. And this is the profound moment where tawakkul stops being a comforting idea and becomes an operational principle of leadership under duress.
So what was the prophet's response?
His response was not panic. It wasn't a new contingency plan. It was a powerful, calm, definitive statement that just cuts through the fear. He says, do not grieve, Allah is with us.
Wow. Let's just sit with that for a second.
Yeah.
The physical reality said we are minutes from death.
Yes.
But the spiritual reality, activated by tawakkul, said the outcome is secured because the ultimate guardian is present.
That's it.
So the lesson, according to our sources, is that tawakkul is fundamentally not passivity. It's a rooted, unshakable confidence and faith that ensures the leader maintains absolute composure and clarity precisely when external circumstances are at their most threatening.
It's the ability to execute the plan, entering the cave, maximizing your protection. And then, when that strategy hits its inevitable wall of uncertainty,
The pursuers arriving.
you have a spiritual foundation strong enough to ensure you don't break down emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. That composure itself is often the mechanism for success. It allows your mind to stay focused on the next action, not spiral into fear.
So let's bring this insight to the modern professional. We might not be hiding in caves, but we definitely deal with existential threats.
All the time. Market volatility, technological obsolescence, political instability, huge internal crises.
So how does Tawakkul inform the behavior of, say, a CEO or a government official today?
Well, the modern application is intensely relevant to mental resilience and long-term sustainability. Professionals today, they rely so heavily on data, on complex algorithms, on projections. They place immense trust in data models. Of course. A leader practicing tawakkul doesn't abandon that data. They don't abandon strategy. Instead, they trust Allah through the data, not instead of it.
Okay, what does that look like?
It means the leader pours every resource into optimizing the 95% certainty the model gives them. But when that 5% unforeseen catastrophic event happens, and it will, they maintain their composure.
I see. So it prevents burnout. Because if you feel that 100% of the outcome rests solely on your shoulders, that burden becomes unbearable. It leads to stress, burnout, poor decision-making under pressure.
Exactly. Tawakkul provides the organizational equivalent of a spiritual release. You perform the ethical, rigorous effort, the execution, and then you release absolute control over the outcome.
It's a balanced approach.
It is. And it ensures the leader stays grounded, knowing they did their absolute best, regardless of whether the stock tanks or the project fails. It's a formula for long-term psychological sustainability in high-pressure environments.
So a leader who is internally grounded by Tawakkul can maintain optimism and morale for their whole team, even after a huge failure.
Yes, because their confidence is rooted in something higher than quarterly earning.
That balance effort, paired with ultimate spiritual release, that's the definition of resilience. So if Tawakkul provides the inner confidence, we need the next pillar to ensure that confidence translates into sustained action over time.
Exactly. And that brings us to Sabr.
Strategic endurance.
If Tawakkul is the anchor of spiritual confidence, Sabr is the quality that provides the sheer staying power you need to lead through decades of unrelenting challenges and setbacks.
The sources really emphasize the statistical centrality of this term. The Quran mentions Sabr, often translated as patience and perseverance, over 90 times.
Over 90 times.
That frequency, it's like an organizational mandate. It tells you right away, this isn't some supplementary virtue. It's a cornerstone. It's a non-negotiable part of the vocabulary for anyone who wants to lead.
And just like with Tawakkul, the sources are very critical of the simplistic understanding of Sabr.
Just be patient.
Right. The essential lesson is that Sabr is not simply waiting. It's not sitting idly by, hoping things will magically get better. It is defined as working steadily despite delay and disappointment.
Working steadily despite delay. I love that distinction.
It's an active, strategic discipline. It's the ability to maintain the necessary pace and the quality of your work, even when external validation or even basic success is nowhere in sight.
So that shifts Sabr from a passive trait into an aggressive, proactive strategy. It means you keep showing up, you keep putting in the effort, you maintain the quality of the struggle, even if the results you're looking for are delayed for months or even years.
And to really grasp the operational complexity of Sabr, we have to draw on the extraordinary challenges the Prophet faced that required this continuous, unrelenting endurance. His life was not a steady ascent to power.
Not at all.
It was a continuous test of strategic endurance against incredibly powerful opposition.
Let's start with a moment of just crushing strategic failure that demanded immediate sabr, the Taif rejection. Can you explain the context there?
Yes. So he had been leading in Makkah for years under persecution. He had recently lost his two greatest protectors, his wife Khadija and his uncle Abu Talib. He desperately needed a new base of operations, a new political alliance.
He was vulnerable.
Extremely. So he traveled to Taif, a strategic city, seeking sanctuary, protection, and a new community that might be receptive to his message. This was a critical mission, politically and strategically.
And instead of being welcomed
and offered the tribal protection he needed, he was met with outright hostility. The leaders of the city didn't just reject him publicly, they orchestrated his humiliation. They deployed slaves and local ruffians to drive him out of the city, throwing stones at him, insulting him the entire way.
That is a devastating, humiliating failure of a key mission, a profound personal and strategic disappointment at a moment when he was already emotionally vulnerable.
Any other leader might have spiraled into bitterness or immediately sought violent retribution, which was the custom.
Of course.
But the Prophet demonstrated Sabr not just by enduring the physical pain, but by controlling his emotional and spiritual reaction afterward. He stepped away from the city and offered a famous prayer, asking God for nothing more than the strength to keep going.
He didn't curse them.
He didn't curse the people of Taif. He endured the disappointment, he accepted the delay, and he strategically pivoted to his next plan, which ultimately led him to Medina years later.
And Taif was just one incident. If you zoom out, you have to consider the macro-level challenge. The years of Makkah persecution, 13 years of systematic opposition.
Economic boycotts that literally starved his community, psychological warfare, constant physical threats. Leading through that kind of sustained, grinding oppression requires an endurance that far surpasses mere patience. It requires strategic sabr.
It's the difference between sprinting through a challenge and running a decades-long ultramarathon.
That's the perfect analogy. Sabr provides the blueprint for that ultramarathon. And these examples, when you look at them together, they show this consistent embodiment of composure under extreme, multifaceted pressure.
He's modeling a system.
He modeled a system of endurance that allows a leader to absorb strategic shocks, maintain ethical standards even when his enemies were completely unethical, and continue working toward the ultimate goal without collapsing into resentment, bitterness, or abandoning the mission.
That's compelling historical context. But let's bring it to our desk today. You know, we're so often defined by immediate feedback loops, instant metrics, the demand for rapid prototyping. How do we operationalize Sabr in this instant gratification world?
It's a huge challenge.
How do you teach this to a startup founder who needs Series B funding in 6 months, not 6 years?
Well, Sabr becomes the ultimate anti-fragility measure in the modern context. When leaders are focused only on short-term gains, they are extremely brittle. They shatter when the market changes or an unforeseen event occurs. Strategic endurance requires the leader to operate on a timescale longer than the current fiscal year.
So it's about designing the strategy with an expectation of failure and delay built right in.
Precisely. Endurance in complex fields. Whether you're working on a multi-year climate initiative, developing sustainable tech, navigating complex family dynamics, or engaged in social activism, they all require Sabr to be operationalized as discipline.
So what does that look like?
It means setting a goal that might take 20 years and designing a strategy that accounts for 19 years of setbacks.
And if we apply this to business, it speaks directly to R&D. So many companies cut R&D the moment profits dip because they lack Sabr.
Exactly. A leader with Sabr understands that the long-term foundational innovations are built during those lean, disappointing years. It's the fuel that allows you to keep working steadily when the delay feels interminable and when every metric or news cycle is demanding immediate, superficial results.
It lets the leader look past the noisy short-term data
And focus on the fundamental trajectory of the mission. And that is what separates enduring institutions from temporary successes.
Okay, so we're moving now to the third pillar, and this is maybe the most externally visible demand on any leader: ʿAdl, or justice. If Tawakkul and Sabr are about the internal state of resilience, ʿAdl is where those principles translate into external policy and decision-making that affects everyone under your authority.
Indeed. This concept is just foundational to the political and social philosophy of the sources. The Quran contains this explicit, comprehensive command. Indeed, Allah commands justice and excellence.
So it's a mandate.
It is a divine mandate for anyone holding authority, no matter how small their domain is.
What really stands out in the sources is the emphasis on the uncompromised standard. We see leaders today in politics, business, community organizations who apply justice selectively.
Oh, all the time.
They're tough on their enemies or subordinates, but they excuse, ignore, or cover up misconduct among their friends, their family, their high-performing allies.
The prophetic model established that justice was never, under any circumstances, to be compromised, even when dealing with his own close allies or family members. And this radical, non-preferential treatment sets the standard for moral governance.
So it ensures the rule of law over the rule of men.
Precisely. It guarantees that the law and ethical conduct apply equally to everyone under his authority.
The most powerful illustrative case of this, the one that really defines the radicality of this justice, involves a woman from a noble tribe, the Banu Makhzum, who was caught stealing. This incident is famous because it tested the very core of his political structure.
This was a huge test, because pre-Islamic Arabian society operated entirely on status and tribal honor. Penalties were often relaxed or even annulled if the perpetrator was from a powerful tribe.
So if this woman were punished severely,
her noble tribe might revolt or at the very least severely undermine the community's stability. They wanted to apply the traditional tribal standard of justice, which privileges status over law.
So there was intense political pressure to make an exception, and an intermediary, Usama ibn Zayd, who was a close friend and companion of the Prophet.
Someone very close to him.
He petitioned him to make an exception for this noble woman, hoping to preserve the tribal alliance and avoid a confrontation.
And the Prophet's reaction was one of powerful moral outrage that just transcended any political expediency. He stood up, he addressed the gathering, and he explicitly rebuked Usama. He declared that previous nations were destroyed precisely because they applied the law selectively punishing the weak while excusing the noble.
This wasn't just a legal decision then. It was a foundational reaffirmation of his whole governance philosophy.
It was. He was utterly unequivocal. And then he delivered the famous declaration that defined his entire philosophy of governance. By Allah, if Fatima, daughter of Muhammad, had stolen, I would cut off her hand.
Wow.
Think about the immense weight of that statement. Fatima was his youngest, most beloved daughter, the closest person to him in the world.
And he's using his own family?
He's using his own family, the one person he was most emotionally attached to, as the ultimate hypothetical example to demonstrate the universality and immutability of the law. He didn't just say the law applied equally. He put his heart, his lineage, his personal affection on the line to prove it.
The lesson is just. It's undeniable and timeless. Justice must be applied without bias. No exceptions for lineage, friendship, personal affinity, political necessity, or even market share.
This absolute commitment to non-preferential treatment is the core definition of moral leadership and sound governance. It's what builds lasting institutional trust far beyond any temporary political gain you might get.
This standard of justice, though, it seems almost impossible to meet in modern politics or corporate culture, where compromise and alliance building are seen as the driving forces.
Right.
How does a leader who relies on networks and alliances operationalize this radical non-preferential treatment of ʿAdl?
The challenge is immense, but the operational application is clear. For contemporary leaders, ʿAdl demands ensuring fairness and justice in policy and execution, particularly in objective areas like hiring, compensation, discipline, resource allocation.
It's about building systems.
It requires designing systems that are inherently blind to status.
Okay, give me a concrete policy example beyond just be fair.
Think about internal restructuring or downsizing. ʿAdl dictates that the decision of who is retained or who is laid off must be based on transparent, objective performance metrics. Not on personal affinity, not political loyalty, not how long they've known the CEO.
So if you have to choose between keeping a friend who is underperforming and letting go of a highly skilled, objective performer,
ʿAdl demands you choose the policy that benefits the institution's long-term health and integrity, regardless of the personal cost to you or your friendship.
That's a powerful framework. And in the regulatory world, this translates to enforcing laws strictly, regardless of a corporation's lobbying power or political donations.
Exactly. When people know the rules apply equally to the largest corporation and the smallest competitor, the entire economic structure gains moral authority. ʿAdl is the structural integrity of a society.
Okay. And that brings us to the final of the four core concepts, Ihsān.
Yes. If ʿAdl is the external standard of justice, what you owe to others, Ihsān, is the internal standard of excellence that defines the quality and integrity of your work, even when you're alone.
And the most profound, I think, and compelling definition of Ihsān, which we can translate as excellence or in beauty or sincerity, it comes from the famous Hadith Jibril, where the angel Gabriel asks the Prophet about the meaning of this term.
And the Prophet's response is the singular guiding principle of this entire concept. Ihsān is to worship Allah as if you see him, and if you cannot, then know he sees you.
That one phrase creates this complete two-layered system of motivation. The first layer is if you see him, that drives peak performance motivated by connection, aspiration, love. You strive for the highest possible quality.
And the second layer, know he sees you, ensures absolute integrity, knowing that every action, no matter how small, how private, how hidden, is observed and recorded.
This is a radical concept because it moves motivation away from external validation like fear of punishment or desire for reward, and toward an internal intrinsic drive.
It means your standard of work has to be impeccable, even for tasks that will never, ever receive an external review.
And the sources show that this standard of Ihsān was not restricted to personal ritual. It was the integrated standard applied across the entire scope of the Prophet's leadership and personal life.
We see Ihsān applied everywhere. In his personal life, ensuring he was the best possible husband and father. In civil governance, ensuring fairness and competence in administration, even in how conflicts were managed.
So the core lesson is constant.
Excellence is doing the right thing, maintaining high quality and integrity, even when no one is watching and no external metric is being tracked. This is the unseen standard that distinguishes mere compliance from genuine moral character.
Wow. Let's just sit with that for a second. The idea of excellence being measured when no one is watching. That just flips most modern corporate KPIs, key performance indicators, on their head. They're all designed around measurable, visible output.
Exactly. Modern leadership often asks, how much effort can I get away with while still hitting the target? Ihsān demands, what is the highest quality I can possibly achieve, regardless of the target?
So it rejects the minimum viable product mindset.
Completely, in favor of the maximally excellent product mindset.
I can easily see how this applies to, say, traditional craftsmanship, where you take pride in the hidden details. But how does the standard of Ihsān influence modern leadership and, say, technology development, which is full of complexity and hidden code?
Well, in the modern context, Ihsān governs more than just quality control. It governs design philosophy and ethical infrastructure. It means building the best possible product, not just the one that meets the minimum legal threshold.
Let's talk about code and transparency. If a line of code is hidden, but you know it could cause a long-term problem, or it introduces a slight bias,
Yes.
Ihsān demands you fix it immediately, even if no user or regulator would ever know you left it there.
That is the perfect application. Think about shadow features or deceptive design practices that nudge users toward a desired corporate outcome. Ihsān prohibits this. It demands transparent, high-integrity design.
So it's like building a bridge. You don't cut corners on the unseen rebar just because it's covered by concrete.
Exactly. And in technology, you don't use manipulative algorithms just because the user interface hides the function.
So quality, integrity, and even aesthetics, how work is presented, how systems interact, the internal cleanliness of the data, all of it has to reflect this principle of inner excellence.
Yes. It creates a culture where leaders aren't driven by external audits, but by an internal commitment to be the best they can be, operating as though the ultimate auditor is perpetually present. It guarantees quality even in moments of high speed and high pressure. Ihsān ensures that the moral leader maintains integrity across all domains, knowing that substandard work is a violation of their personal code, regardless of whether a client or a boss ever discovers it.
We've broken down these four powerful pillars: Tawakkul, spiritual confidence; Sabr, strategic endurance; ʿAdl, moral governance; and Ihsān, inner excellence. Now it's time to bring them all together, to define their collective purpose, moving them from individual virtues into a single, cohesive, operational leadership model.
Right. Because when you synthesize these four concepts, they transform into operational qualities that define effective organizational strength in any context. They cover the leader's internal state, their long-term behavior, their external application of authority, and their commitment to quality.
Okay, let's explicitly link them to their organizational output. Tawakkul leads directly to spiritual confidence. It allows a leader to take calculated, ethical risks and handle massive failures without collapsing.
Because the final outcome is ultimately not theirs to secure. It ensures mental stability.
Right. And Sabr, that results in strategic endurance. This is the quality that ensures persistence and long-term vision.
Preventing the organization from being derailed by short-term setbacks, market noise, or crises. It's the engine of organizational resilience and mission continuity.
Then we have ʿAdl. ʿAdl ensures moral governance. This guarantees a level playing field. It builds universal trust both internally and externally.
And it establishes an ethical framework that is predictable and fair, which strengthens the organizational culture from the inside out.
And finally, Ihsān drives inner excellence. This ensures that the quality of work, the integrity of the team, the ethics of the process are maintained at the highest unseen standard.
Protecting the mission from internal decay or cutting corners.
So together, these four concepts form what our sources define as the prophetic leadership model. It's a holistic combination of faith, ethics, and execution.
Exactly. It's not just about what you believe or how well you plan. It's about how those deeply held beliefs inform your rigorous planning and your high-quality implementation.
And the strength of this model lies in its integration, right?
Absolutely. You can't have justice, ʿAdl, without the endurance, Sabr, to withstand the political pressure to compromise. You can't maintain excellence, as Ihsān, without the spiritual confidence, Tawakkul, to take the necessary, sometimes difficult steps required to maintain that quality.
The system fails if one pillar is removed.
It's a mutually reinforcing moral economy.
If you imagine this applied to a community, it means the leader is strategically grounded, fair to every citizen regardless of status, obsessed with the quality of every public service, and remains calm and composed even during a war or a famine. That is a robust structure.
And this combined model becomes so profoundly relevant when we apply it to the complexities of the contemporary world, especially the ethical challenges of the AI era, which we said we needed to dive into.
Right. When technology moves faster than human ethics, you need an operational anchor like this.
You need more than rules. You need character. This framework provides that character. Let's look at specific AI ethical problems and see how the four concepts provide solutions.
Okay, start with the most pressing issue in AI algorithmic fairness. This falls directly under the mandate of ʿAdl.
Absolutely. That application of ʿAdl in AI means ensuring transparent policies and rigorous auditability of decision-making frameworks. If an AI system used for loan approvals or hiring shows bias against a certain demographic,
Even if that bias is an unintended consequence of historical training data,
AI demands the leader must halt deployment, fix the system, and institute transparent audit trails. The leader cannot hide behind the algorithm. They have to be accountable for the outputs. This ensures people know why a decision was made and that it was made without bias.
And what about the concept of quality, Ihsān, when we apply it to these incredibly complex technological systems?
Ihsān demands ethical programming and design that goes beyond just the functional requirements. If you're a coder, Ihsān requires that you prioritize safety, robustness, and long-term societal benefit over speed to market.
So it means proactively preventing malicious use.
Exactly, preventing misuse, even if no current regulation requires it. The hidden code, the backend, the data pipeline, it must reflect the same high standard of integrity as the front-facing product. We're seeing major corporate failures today precisely because internal quality Ihsān was sacrificed for speed and profit.
That's fascinating because it shifts the ethical burden from regulators who are always playing catch-up back onto the developers and leaders who have the internal knowledge.
It's an internal check, not an external one. And then we layer on the confidence and endurance. The AI field is highly volatile. Leaders are facing existential uncertainty. Is this technology going to destroy jobs? Is it going to destabilize society?
Right.
The combination of Tawakkul and Sabr is essential here.
How so?
Tawakkul allows the leader to pursue innovation and take necessary calculated risks without that paralyzing fear. You execute the best strategy with the best data, but you maintain the composure and spiritual confidence you need to navigate regulatory uncertainty and public skepticism. It prevents the leader from freezing or panicking when the inevitable setbacks arrive.
And Sabr provides the strategic endurance for long-term policy. If ethical AI development needs 10 years of slow, careful work and regulation.
Sabr is what allows the organization to persist through the inevitable 5 years of disappointing or delayed results. It's maintaining the commitment to ethical excellence even when competitors are racing ahead with reckless speed.
So it creates balanced leadership.
It's a holistic system. The leader is grounded enough to face the unknown, Tawakkul, resilient enough to wait for ethical systems to mature, Sabr, fair enough to deploy technology without bias, ʿAdl, and committed enough to quality to ensure the underlying code is impeccable, Ihsān. It is, in essence, a moral operating system designed to handle maximum complexity.
So this is comprehensive moral operating system. It addresses both the internal state of the leader, their character, and the external application of their authority, their policy. It turns spiritual concepts into mandatory operational standards.
That's it, exactly.
This has been a necessary and an extensive deep dive into what the sources define as the vocabulary of revelation. To wrap up, let's just reinforce the essential realization we've extracted today.
These Quranic terms, Tawakkul, Sabr, ʿAdl, and Ihsān, they're far more than abstract virtues. They are tangible, actionable behavioral codes. They are definitions of applied, verifiable character.
And the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, he built an entire civilization not on rhetoric or slogans, but on lived meanings. The words define the culture, and the culture was built on the demonstrable, consistent actions of the leader.
Therefore, the formula for enduring success, according to this leadership model, is integrated and it's non-negotiable. You have to deploy tawakkul in your strategy for spiritual confidence, exhibit sabr when facing challenges for strategic endurance, ensure ʿAdl in applying authority for moral governance, and demand ihsān in defining your character for inner excellence.
And the ultimate conclusion here is that reviving this specific vocabulary today means far more than just learning new terms. It means reviving the very soul of leadership itself, injecting integrity and long-term resilience back into our decision-making in an era that desperately needs ethical guidance.
And that leads us to a final, concrete action for you, the listener, to explore this week. The aim here is to convert intellectual understanding into operational behavior. We challenge you to choose just one of these four concepts, tawakkul, sabr, ʿAdl, or ihsān, and consciously operationalize it for the next 7 days.
And this means being surgical about it. If you choose Sabr, track your emotional and behavioral response to specific, predictable delays. A client missing a deadline, a project stalling. If you choose ʿAdl, track how you handle a moment where bias or personal affinity or political pressure tempts you to make an exception to a policy you know is correct.
And for a deeper reflection on your own leadership trajectory, you might consider creating a personal leadership vocabulary chart. Maybe 10 essential ethical terms, they don't have to be Arabic, but they have to be actionable, that you consciously intend to live by. Ask yourself, what words would define my world, and what actions will I take to ensure they are fully operational?
Thank you for joining us for this extensive deep dive into the operational vocabulary of prophetic leadership. We hope this knowledge helps you lead with greater strategic endurance and moral confidence this week.